What's up, everyone, and welcome back to SC Ayala Talk. We are on a journey through my book, Lovesick, Pages of a Poetic Heart, by yours truly, SC Ayala. I'd like to thank everyone who has joined tonight. I'd like to thank you for the participation in this journey. We're going to be on page 15 tonight. The poem is entitled The Greatness in You, and then we'll get into the backstory. For those that have been listening, I just want to say thank you again. If you have the book, feel free to follow along. We're on page 15, and if you don't, it is available online at Amazon and Barnes & Nobles and anywhere that you want to find your best books at. So, without further ado, this is The Greatness in You. The greatness in you. The greatness in you is still left to be seen. The greatness in you is still left to be heard. The greatness in you is still so misunderstood. The greatness in you is still searching for a way out. The greatness in you still struggles inside. The greatness in you is so overlooked and passed on. The greatness in you is so easily lost. The greatness in you has no price and does not cost. The greatness in you I see every day. The greatness in you will be seen by all one day. The greatness in you is so great, that is true. For the greatest of your greatness is simply being you. So, this one hits a little bit different. The last few weeks we've been talking and I've been sharing backstories about my own children and the love and inspiration that they basically bestowed upon me, which is why I wrote about them in the book. And this one is simply going out to all the parents out there that have children that have some form of special needs or disability. And maybe sometimes the disability isn't so much, something that can be seen, but rather neuro. And, there's different things that you could basically touch on saying that. There could be a cognitive disability. There could be a transfer of speech, speech delays. There could be autism. There's just so many things in a wide spectrum of neuro disabilities. It could be learning disability, it could be vision impairment, it could be speech impairment, hearing impairment. I mean, the list goes on with disabilities. It could be, palsy and things of that nature. There's so much that we just don't know or can always see. Now, even with children that have Down syndrome, sometimes it's hard to see the high-functioning kids that, per se don't really have and I'm reaching here for the best words without feeling like I'm singling anyone out when I'm talking about this. There's so many handicaps, and I think a lot of times your child might look, for lack of better words, normal, may not walk with a limp, or may not be walking or sounding like there's anything wrong. But a lot of times high-functioning autistic children, you can't always tell that there's something happening inside them that isn't quote-unquote normal. And it kind of flies under the radar until you actually try to interact with a child who has something going on. And you realize, for most people, you realize fairly quick that, hey, something's off with this guy. And, you kind of go, oh, maybe he's just weird. No, he's not weird. He may be autistic. He may have a cognitive problem. He may have delayed speech. He may have something, and just because we can't see it, they're kind of like invisible impairments, And kids can be really harsh. And when they don't understand or they don't know because they've never been exposed to any type of, neuro disabilities. And I know a lot of times that, even when they come home and they're not feeling their best and they're feeling like, the world is ending because, little Johnny didn't sit with him and he thinks he's weird because he doesn't speak the way that they speak, or he doesn't understand the way they understand, or he doesn't read as fast, as the other kids. A lot of times, you have to ask yourself, okay, how do I handle this? Because a lot of times, we as parents want to protect our kids, and especially those that have disabilities and impairments. First thing I want to do, when I was a young mom was, I wanted to take up arms and, march down to that playground and, get little Johnny and be like, hey, what's wrong with you? But obviously that's not, the best advice. And I don't advise doing that, to a third grader or a second grader. Kids are just kids. And a lot of times, you got to step back and just kind of go, okay, this kid's really having a hard time. And, so you, as a parent, at least for myself, I tried different things like, how about we make some cool friendship bracelets, and you can pass them out to your buddies and, or find, some extra little figurines that you can hand out, superhero toys. And, it's always a good way to make friends. I mean, what kid doesn't like free toys, So there was always things, that we could work out, or better ways of trying to communicate, like, yeah, we have this going on, but he's still a cool kid and he likes regular toys, or she's a regular kid and she has a speech impairment, or, something that's going on. And one thing I think we don't do enough as a society is educate these kids. Obviously kids are smart enough to know, hey, that kid is off and what's wrong with them. Well, there's your opening. There's your window. Take that opportunity to explain to them, hey, little Johnny just reads different. He learns different. He sees things in color rather than in black and white, little things like that. We just got to start educating them, because, by the time they're diagnosed, kids are diagnosed in schools, most of the time, they just want to, put a label on it, sit them in the corner, give them some crayons and just call it a day. Or put them in a special class, where they feel even more singled out. And I don't necessarily agree with that, unless a child could potentially harm themselves. And obviously, they do need better, isolated areas, because sometimes a big classroom with a bunch of chatty Cathys are just, too much, So there are good places as well. But the greatness in you was because that's how I seen, that's how I seen them. And not everybody understands the greatness in these kids, but it's in there and it's just trying to get out. And shout out to the parents that are going to those IEP meetings and having to listen to psychologists and psychiatrists and teacher A and teacher B and, everybody trying to put together this IEP for special needs, and this is what we're going to do. And, sometimes it becomes so overwhelming that you just want to pull your hair out, trust me. But at the end of the day, the only thing I wanted to know was, hey, how are you? You doing okay? Is there anything you need? You want to talk? I mean, these are genuine questions. And sometimes he would, and sometimes he wouldn't. And sometimes I would, and sometimes I wouldn't, and that was okay too. So to all the parents out there, just remember, the greatness in them extends from you. If your special needs kid is doing great socially, in school, out of school, shout out to you, because that greatness started with you. Education always starts at home first. Don't ever forget that. And don't ever give up when the mountain looks monstrous. You'll get there. They'll finish. Whatever it is. And just remember, on those beautiful spring days when the backyard looks great, take the moment to cherish the beauty in just being outside with your special needs kid and just playing in the backyard for a few hours. No homework, no schedule, just cherish the moment. You know, I think that's pretty much what got us through. And again, parents, greatness starts in you. Anyhow, I'm SC Ayala, and this is SC Ayala Talk, and I want to thank you for being with me on this journey through Lovesick Pages of Poetic Heart. That was The Greatness in You, page 15. Please like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell notification, and I'll see you on the next page.